as the basis for leading a life of purpose with joy and happiness. We mentioned the famous midrash that Rabbi Akiva woke up his students by drawing the comparison between Sarah's 127 years and the 127 provinces that Queen Esther ended up presiding over. And didn't just draw a comparison, but demonstrated that each moment of Sarah's life gave the impetus, the strength, and fueled Esther's ability to rise and preside over such a tumultuous empire in a very tumultuous time. In the opening in the opening verse of Parshas Chai Sarah, which we mentioned yesterday, V'yu Chai Sarah, and it was a life of Sarah, 127 years. The totality of Sarah's life. Rashi notes that it doesn't say 127; it says 127. And there are different reasons. There are different ways to interpret it. The reason why the Torah doesn't just outright spell out the number, but rather literally spells out 127. Rashi interprets this to mean kulam hayu shavim latova. All of the 100 and the 20 and the 7, all 127 years were equally good. Because we know that there's the goodness that a person experiences in their single digits, and their double digits, and of course in the triple digits. But here Rashi says that all of those years were equally good. Chassidus asks a question. How can you say equally good? To say good is one thing. Fine, good is one thing. But equally good? There are so many different challenges that arise in each year of our life, how much more so each decade of our life, how much more so when it comes to a century. There are different challenges that arise. And certainly, as we mentioned in yesterday's talk, Sarah's life was quite tumultuous. And Sarah went through so many different experiences. Can we say they were all equally good? For example, can we say that the day that Sarah became pregnant with Yitzchak, and how much more so when she delivered Yitzchak, was equally good as the days that she was walking around feeling and being barren? Are the days that she came out of captivity from Aro and from Avimelech as equally good as the days that she was taken into captivity and spent those days? You could say that's equally good. But from here, we learn what true simcha is all about. The source of simcha in a Jew, as we discussed in our very first lesson, emanates solely from the godly soul. The animal soul, as we mentioned yesterday, is not capable of true unbridled joy and happiness. The animal soul needs reasoning, and the reasoning are contingent based on external variables. And so long as from the external perspective, everything is good, everything is moving forward as planned, and all the resources and the details and so on and so forth are aligned, then the animal soul could say, oh, finally I'm happy. But we know, as we discussed yesterday, that happiness is transitory because it relies on variables to remain constant. But who amongst us or amongst the entire world, past, present, can say that every variable in our lives is equally good? We could say that we could find goodness in every single, if we start from the lens of Torah, we could say we could find the goodness in every single situation. But to say equally good, So where does true joy and happiness that it allows us to view every single detail of our lives as being equally good only from the godly soul? As we mentioned yesterday and several times already, David HaMelech in chapter 63 says, Kitov chaz dechamechaim, for your benevolence, for your kindness, Hashem, transcends all of life. In other words, when a Jew is connected to their true selves, their godly selves, then from that lens, every single detail is godly. And if every single detail is godly, then all is good. What is good? Good is in the Torah is synonymous with light and clarity. Where does this clarity come from? For example, as we know, on Motzei Shabbat, we quote a verse from Megillat Esther after the triumph of the Jewish people, etc. The Megillah says, La Yehudim hayta ora v'simcha v'sason v'yikar. The Jews had light, joy, and happiness, and glory. Chassidus asks a question. We know that every single word in the Torah is precise and concise. Therefore, if the Torah is telling us and is placing light with joy and happiness, and immediately one follows the other, means that there's a direction over here. What's the source of being sad, anxious, and angry, and despondent, etc., etc.? As we mentioned before, the animal soul. The animal soul, which only sees facts, which can only perceive in the factual world. And yes, it sees the outer shell, but it does not envision the inner dimension of the facts. Therefore, if the facts are aligned with the animal soul's understanding of what feels good, what tastes good, what looks good, etc., then it's fine being happy. But if it doesn't, well, that's the reason why I can't be happy. If it wasn't for this fact, then Ora, light. When we enter a dark room and turn on the light, what do we effectively add to the room? Practically, we don't really add anything. In other words, when we walk into a dining room that is pitch dark, and then we turn on the light, did we add another piece of furniture? No. Did we change the schematics of the furniture? No. So what was added then? Clarity. In the pitch dark, a person could bump and trip into furniture. In the pitch dark, if you hand someone a diamond, a very precious diamond, a sizable diamond, in the pitch dark, to the sense of touch, this feels like nothing more than rocks. What allows us to determine the value is first and foremost seeing it for what it is. When we turn on the light in a room, we turn on clarity. When one lacks clarity, that's when they wallow in the darkness, and that's when sadness and anger and despondency, etc., have room in their life. And that's because they're viewing everything from the animal soul's perspective. It's very interesting because in creation, when Hashem created Hashem said, let there be light. And Hashem made a distinction between light and darkness. The sages note a very, very factual point in the Torah itself. The sun and the moon were only placed in the heavens on the fourth day of creation, on Wednesday. So what light is the Torah speaking about on the first day? From where did this light emanate? Rather, the Torah, the Rashi brings that this is not the light that we recognize as light when we turn on the light, but rather this is the Rashi intimates, this is the hidden light that Hashem hid for the future, for the tzaddikim to come and discover it. This is the infinite light that Hashem placed within the confines of the world for every one of us to come and be able to discover and draw and reveal it. Start first and foremost, starting with ourselves. So very interestingly, it doesn't say or la Yehudim hayta or, the Jews had the light, ora, which is also a form of saying light, but with an hey. This is not just any light. La Yehudim hayta ora v'simcha v'sason, where the Jewish people had they tapped into through their tshuva, through the taking responsibility for their lives by recognizing that every detail of their life, thus and including Rahman al-Islam, the decree in itself, is all God. And if it's all God, there must be an infinite beauty and infinite kindness to be revealed here. Where does that stem from? What is the number one characteristic, the base characteristic that allows us to be joyous and happy? Humility. As Yeshayahu says, "V'yasafu anavim besimcha," that the humble ones would increase in happiness. In other words, true joy and happiness does not come from I want, I need, I this, and I don't want this, I don't want that. As we mentioned in the anecdote for Reb Mendel, when that young man approached him and says, I want to be happy, what do I do? Reb Mendel says, remove the I and the want and to be. Because all of those are ego-driven. I want to be. Why do you want to be? And more importantly, why aren't you? As we mentioned in class number 1, happiness and joy are the natural state of the godly soul. For the animal soul, happiness and joy does not come naturally. For that reason, it must always find another reason, another variable, another detail to add to itself in order to achieve this. Where, in contrast, the joy and happiness that's sent from the godly soul is natural to itself because it's a piece of God. And for this reason, humility, true humility, is the source of joy and happiness. Because humility, as we discussed several times, based on a Shavuot discourse of the previous Rebbe from 1940, true humility doesn't mean, God forbid, I'm a nobody and nothing. That's the corrupted humility. That's what's called in Hebrew, anava she'ena bimkoma. A false humility, a humility that's out of place. For a person to think, I am a nobody and nothing, and I don't have what I need. I don't have what is necessary for me to live a happy life. That's somewhat idolatrous. That's the opposite of humility. True humility means that I firmly recognize the ultimate truth, that this is God's world. And God, in his infinite wisdom and infinite benevolent love, created me with all of my settings and gave him all of my strength and all of my impediments and all my challenges and every resource and every single relationship that I have. It's all from God. And if it's all from God, where is there room to be despondent? It's only, God forbid, when we start believing that the world in itself has a say, that the world in itself has powers over my life. Olam milashon ha'elam, the concealment somehow could dictate my day-to-day. That's not truth. The reason why there's concealment in this world is for us to be able, as we learned in the Basi Lagani discourses, is for us to be able to utilize this concealment and ultimately transform it by first and foremost subduing the agents and the forces within that entity, within that experience that conceal its true essential godly purpose. And when we subliminate it, Hashem in turn then transforms the darkness into light and the bitter into sweet. In other words, the darkness in itself is part and parcel of the service. It's a very interesting law in the laws of the service of the Kohen service in the tabernacle as well as the subsequent Batei Mikdashot, the holy temples. Parshat Tetzaveh teaches us about the priestly garments and starts spelling out the priestly service in the tabernacle in the holy temples. And one of the details that we learned that the priestly garments aren't to be worn during the service, but rather they are part and parcel of the service. To the extent if the Kohen didn't wear one of his garments, and the high priest didn't wear one of his garments, he might have worn all the garments that the Kohen wears, but he is missing the exceptional garments of a high priest. The service is invalid. That's a whole discussion by itself. But one of the emanating details of this and laws of the service of wearing and serving with these garments is that the garments were to be worn directly upon the skin of the Kohen. And if for one reason or another, a partition would come in between his body and the garments, the service is invalid. There comes a question. During the festivals, for example, Sukkot, there were 70 bulls offered throughout the 7 days of Sukkot, as well as the celebration offerings, as well as the Tamid offering, as well as individual offerings. Our sages described that there were points where the Kohen could be knee deep in blood from all the animals that were offered up. Comes a question. Then if he's knee deep in blood, isn't the blood that's soaked in and inevitably becomes attached to his skin, isn't that considered to be a separation, a partition between his body and his clothing? And Rabbi explains no. Because the blood in itself is part and parcel of the service. It cannot act as a separating agent. Yes, to the naked eye, it seems that now there's a layer, a thin layer of light. But nevertheless, now there's a layer. When it comes to chatzitza, it doesn't matter if it's very thick or very thin. We know when a woman immerses herself in a mikvah, there can't be even the slightest of chatzitza, of chatzitzot, of partition. Even if a hair from the mikvah somehow, so they didn't clean the mikvah, God forbid, and a hair from the previous immersion somehow was floating, and it came on the skin, and she immersed, and it remained on the skin. That's a chatzitza. For that reason, a woman has to brush her hair completely, so there won't be any bindings between one hair and another, with all the laws that are attached to it. So it doesn't matter if it's a thin or very thick partition. A partition is a partition. So when the blood is now congealing upon the skin of the coin, isn't that a chatzitza? The Rebbe says no, because that is part and parcel of the service. So too in our lives, as each one of us are a kohen to Hashem, a priest, as Hashem says before He gave us the Torah, "Aten tiyu li mamlechet kohanim v'goy kadosh," that all of you will be for me a nation of priests and a holy nation. Means that each and every one of us are a kohen to Hashem. We can't have a partition between us and Hashem. And what is a partition? Evil thoughts, speech, and action. What makes it evil? That is in itself is separated from God. That is like I'm independent of God. That what's happening to me is independent of God. That this is not divine providence. And because of that, I have the right to be sad and despondent, etc., etc. But that's all the animal soul. True humility means to accept that everything that I have at all times, at all places, with all people, is all God endowed. And if Hashem is giving me darkness, it's because He believes in my ability to transform that darkness into light. And not just any light, Ora, infinite light. It's very interesting because when it comes to Sari Menu, when she found out she was pregnant with Yitzchak, and then she gave birth to Yitzchak, what did she call him? She called him Yitzchak, laughter. He will laugh. And what's the reasoning? She says, Tzchok asali Elokim. Elokim made me laughter. What does that mean? It's very interesting because we discussed several months ago regarding Yitzchak. As we know, the forefathers, each one of our forefathers, was the embodiment of one of the divine sfirot. Avram was the embodiment of chesed, of kindness. Yitzchak was the embodiment of gvura, of justice, of discipline, of might. And Yaakov was the embodiment of tiferet, of truth and harmony and beauty, etc., synergy. But out of all three, Yitzchak himself is called laughter. How does that match Yitzchak? Laughter. Yitzchak is gvura, is discipline. Go. But as Sarah called him, Tzchok asal Elokim, Elokim made laughter for me. When is A joke. What makes a joke funny? What makes a good joke, a good anecdote funny? Obviously, there's a delivery in it. But aside from the delivery, what is the true agent of making it funny? It's a punchline that seems to be a complete reversal of the narrative that was said thus far. In other words, while the narrative was as is being delivered, we knew in the context that we are being told a joke that there's going to be some reversal, something that's going to really come out of this. And the greater the reversal, the greater the punchline, the greater the laughter. And this is what Sarah would say, that as she said to the angel, when he informed her that you're going to have a child, she says, my husband is too old and I'm too old. In other words, according to the narrative, and which narrative? Hashem's narrative, as we proclaim every single day in davening, Baruch She'amar v'haya olam. Blessed is he who says, and the world comes to be. Hashem brings the world into being through his divine speech, as explained in Shari Yichud from the Adar Rebbe, in the Tanya. So effectively, the entire world and every experience is Hashem's communication to us. But Sarah doesn't say, Tzchok hasali havaya, yudke vavke. Tzchok hasali Elokim. Elokim made laughter for me. We know that the name Elokim is synonymous with gvura, with contraction, with concealment, with nature, as the name Elokim is equivalent to the word nature in Hebrew. 86 and 86. Sarah doesn't say Tzchok asali avaya, but Tzchok asali Elokim. Because when we experience Elokim, only then the whole entire purpose of a contraction is to set up an infinite laughter punchline. As the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe explained in a very foundational discourse from 1905, from Rosh Hashanah, and gives a parable for creation, for the modality and the forces that Hashem employed in creating and constantly creating his world. As it says, Bereshit bara Elokim, at the beginning, Elokim created. Doesn't say Havaya. Because even though creation, as Chassidut explains, stems from Havaya, but nevertheless, it has to be contracted through the name of Elokim. And in order to really understand this, the Rebbe Rashab offers up a parable. When a teacher first starts teaching a first grader, let's just say 1 + 1. The very first element of the entire learning experience begins with a contraction in the teacher's mind. Because if the teacher comes into the classroom of a first grade classroom and delivers everything that the teacher knows about 1 + 1, including quantum physics level 1+1. Not only the students are not going to learn, it's going to overwhelm the students and it's going to create a non-learning environment. For that reason, the very first element of teaching is contracting what the teacher knows, and then leaving one particular point that's relevant to the lesson. Henceforth, the teacher now has to develop this point of the lesson in its width and its height and its breadth in according to the needs of the students. What does this teacher do? The teacher takes an orange and another orange and says, class, we have one orange and we have another orange and we put them together.
Well, where'd you go?
How many oranges do we have?
Where are you?
Whoever is there, please mute your microphone. Thank you so much. How many oranges do we have? We have two. Now, in reality, 1+1 has nothing to do with oranges. The concept of 1+1 is a truly abstract concept, one that could be understood on so many different planes and so many different sciences, including in the spiritual planes. But for the sake of raising the child's knowledge, the teacher has to first contract what they know, develop it, as we said before, according to the standard and the grasp ability of the student, and offer parables that the student is going to be able to take in, digest, and work mold it until it expands the vessel of the student, of the mind's vessel, that they could tolerate a subject, a concept that before they didn't even weren't aware of. And this process repeats itself over and over, and each time that the student grasps more, and their vessels of their mind expand more, and as they are able to tolerate more subtle concepts, the student's mind, and as well as the students, are growing and growing and growing, and eventually the student can come to quantum physics level. So too, when Hashem created the world, the purpose of creation was to reveal infinity within the finitude and synergize them. But had Hashem immediately revealed that infinite light, then finitude could not exist. Inasmuch as when the sunlight is glaring, a little flashlight doesn't matter. It has no purpose. You won't even notice this light. It'll be completely bottled. Or as when the light is the light is still within the sun, you can't call it light. For this reason, Hashem had to contract his divine presence in order to create a finite world. But from this mashal we learn, from this parable we learn something very deep about our lives and about the spiritual cosmos. The purpose of contraction is not for removal. The ultimate purpose of contraction is in order to be able to reveal something that wasn't able to originally and naturally be revealed. For that is contraction, for the purpose of growth. So when Hashem created the world, at first it could not withstand infinite light. It is specifically through our service throughout all the years of exile and of all the location and all the scenarios and all the experience, ups and downs and everything that we've experienced that refines this world, that refine the gashmiut and the chumriyut, even the corporality, the physicality and the corporality of this world to the point where it is able to tolerate more and more and more and more light. As we're seeing the natural phenomenal growth of this world, as all the technology that is coming about and the developments that we're watching right in front of our eyes is due to the fact that we worked collectively over all the times, dealing with every nitty-gritty and revealing its true purpose. And that's the purpose of every mitzvah. And that's why all the mitzvot, most of the mitzvot, are intertwined with physicality. That's why we say blessings. Brachot, but the word bracha, it means to extend from one end to another. When we say bracha, we're extended all the way from the essence of Hashem. Baruch atah, blessed are you, not even a name, you directly, the essence of God above creation. We start to draw Baruch, the beginning of the influx. Baruch atah from the essence, and then Hashem Yud Kei Vav Kei, and then Elokeinu, and continues to all the way until this blueberry. In other words, what we've been doing collectively, each and every one of, and collectively, and then each and every one of us uniquely in our own lives, in every configuration, is working to reveal the infinite nature of this world. And for this is what Sarah says, Chok Asal Elokim. Contraction is not there to remove from you. Contraction is there to reveal the true you and reveal the true essence of this world. As we learned several years ago, right at October 7th, right the week before October 7th, we started learning a discourse from the previous Rebbe from 1939, Bereshit bara Elokim. And the previous Rebbe says over there, Bereshit Bishvil Torah, as we know that the Midrash teaches us that the Bereshit is an anagram of two words, Bet Reshit, two heads. For two head reasons, Hashem created the world. For two primary reasons, Hashem created the world. For the Torah, which is deemed the head of Hashem's pathway, and for the Jewish people, which is Israel, Shenikru Reshis. And the Jewish people are called the head of Hashem's handiwork, of his plantings. Hashem created the world for the Jewish people to learn and occupy themselves with the Torah and the mitzvot. Bara, he created. The word bara is also etymologically related to the word briut, health. Hashem created the world for the Jewish people to utilize the Torah in order to heal what? Elokim. The contractions. That's the purpose for why Hashem created the world. And for that reason, each and every one of us are given our own particular world. As Shlomo HaMelech says in Ecclesiastics, V'gam et ha'olam nata be'libam. And Hashem placed the world in our hearts. In other words, each and every one of us are a walking microcosm, and each and every one of us view the world distinctly. Why do we view the world distinctly? Why do we remember things differently than what the other person remembers it? Because each and every one of us has a particular tikkun that we're here to fix, that we're here to heal. But the ultimate purpose is tzchok, laughter, happiness. Where does that happiness stem from? Only from humility of the godly soul. Recognizes that indeed the entire world, the entire concealment that we are privy to, no matter how it came about, is therefore an infinite great revelation. The animal soul doesn't understand this. The animal soul understands triggers because, after all, it's pre-programmed for survivability. And therefore, it records every single possible infraction, not just the infraction, the space, the time, the person, the smell, and constantly scans environments for a possible uprising of this again. That's what's called a trigger. The triggers are only in the animal soul. A godly soul doesn't have triggers. Just the opposite. When the godly soul knows that the trigger, says, I have Elohim. This is where I need to heal. This is exactly why I'm here to heal, not to be taken aback. You know, what makes a soldier, and how much more so a Delta Force soldier, a soldier? That unlike common citizens, when God forbid, a common citizen hears a shot, they immediately duck, they immediately hide. A soldier doesn't hide. A soldier is trained to run towards the bullets. But this, each and every one of us are given our settings. And incidentally, regarding Avram and Sarah, it says, Avram and Avram and Sarah were old and came with days. What does that mean? Later on, it says, Avram zaken baba yamim. But there's another verse that says, Avram and Sarah. What does that mean? There's one way of life of occupying time and space. And the world and the animal soul is solely focused on that. How much more time I could occupy in this world and how much more space I could acquire in this world. And if the time or the space is limited, then it worries and it panics and this and this. As we know that Rabbi Akiva teaches one of the most powerful teachings I've ever heard regarding the remedy of this. The world is concerned of how to add more years to my life. But the godly soul, in contrast to that, is focused on how do I add more life to my years? It's a question. Am I alive today? Am I truly living? Not, is my heart beating? Did I eat breakfast? Is the sun your? Am I alive? Am I, the I, is it alive? What's life? Is it growing? Am I producing? And this could be any and every space, every experience, every time frame with everyone and everything at all times. And that could only be when we're connected to our true selves. That could only happen when we connect to our true self and utilize Torah and mitzvot. that could only occur when we connect to our godly soul and reveal it outwardly. Because the animal soul will always be focused on its pre-programmed disposition, which is, I need to survive. You remember in the 70s, there was a very famous song, I Will Survive. That is how I would live. The singer says of all the reasons, first she was petrified, and then this, and in other words, yeah, but what is it all about? Survival, survival. We are not a nation of survivors. You who cleave to Hashem, Yud Vavke Elokechem, how it's it's contracted towards to you, are deemed alive today. Hayom, the word yom is synonymous with light. When it says that Sarah was old and came with days, as we discussed several months ago, if the inyan was to put on tefillin, let's just say 1 billion times, 1 million times, whatever it is throughout one's lifetime, a person could technically, in other words, if that's the product is you need to put on, your neshama came out to put tefillin 1 million times, 1 billion times, then a person could technically take off a year or 2 years and spend the majority of the daylight portion of the day putting on tefillin, taking them off, putting on tefillin and taking them off. But that's not the mitzvah. The mitzvah is to put it on daily. Why? Because each day has its own configuration. Each day is a complete and utter novelty. As we discussed in the meditation class, that each hour, each day it emanates from a combination of Hashem's divine name. And one day doesn't mirror the other day. No matter how many Tuesdays, no matter how many Wednesdays, no matter how many, doesn't matter. Each day in itself is independent from anything that came before it or afterwards. As we know that time in itself has two ways of view, two tiers to it. There's the individual second or the individual minute, the individual hour, aside from what came before and after. And there's this individual moment and second moment or hour, etc., that ties what was in order to bring what's going to be. And with this in mind, one of the greatest awareness and understanding and internal knowledge that a Jew, or anybody for that matter, could have. Sometimes people ask me, how are you so excited all the time? Sometimes like they say, like you're like sometimes you're like childlike. You're like, oh, everything like you're happy. Like, where do you get that from? It's very simple. What makes a child so excitable versus an adult? When does, as we say many times, getting older is a privilege. Get as older as possible. But getting old is a no-no. And being old is not determined by age. When does old age set in? When the person stops experiencing curiosity and excitability, etc. Their steps become less wider. They're not looking to move and groove and so on and so forth. They want to. It's time to relax. Why? There's a great klipa, ungodly force called kvar. I already did. I already experienced this. I've seen this. You already said this to me. I already heard this. That's it. Nothing else here. In other words, I noticed a fact. That's it, the end. The truth is, every moment, every second is a new creation, and every single second, we're a new creation. The person that was here a minute ago, the people that were here on the Zoom a minute, don't exist anymore. We're literally new creations with memories of the past. Why do we have if we're new creations, why do we have memories of the past? Because as the adage goes, right now, you're the youngest you'll ever be. You're the youngest you'll ever be, and the oldest you've ever been. This is a perfect conversion of past, present, and future. We have memories of the past in order for us to be able to utilize it to to grow with more and more understanding. As we spoke, there's a college student once approached the Rebbe and asked him, Rebbe, I know you're a tzaddik, so you always get it perfect. Do you own an eraser? And the Rebbe said, of course. He says, but Rebbe, why do you need an eraser? He says, because yesterday I jotted down my thoughts, but today, being 24 hours older, I erase yesterday's thoughts and rewrite them and revise them from today's perspective. Meaning each day in itself is a complete novelty and terrific, infinite, with infinite possibility, opportunity to make history. I want to put something in front of you right now. Right now, each and every one of us, as a matter of fact, every human being in the world right now is making history. Sometimes when people get an aliyah or they open up the Aron, they carry the Torah or whatever, I said, wow, that was amazing. Wow, do you know you just made history? And they think I'm being facetious. I said, no, I'm not being facetious. This never happened before. It'll never happen again. This configuration of time and space and this people, it never happened before. It'll never happen again. Right now, you're making history. Each and every one of us are continuously making history. Neural pathways. Question is, which history are we making? What's the historical precedence that we're setting today? And with this, each moment is giving us an opportunity to make this history. But from this, we need to be connected to our godly soul, to our true selves. Because only from the godly soul are we able to have the correct aptitude and see with vision, with godly vision, that even the Elohim, even the contraction, is a part of the greatest revelation in the world. For this, David HaMelech says, Ach le'Elokim domi nafshi. Indeed, towards Elohim, my soul will be silent. When we experience Elohim, when we experience contraction, the first way to interpret that contraction is to silence that emanates from Hod, from the attribute of Hod in our spiritual characteristics, which is attached to the left leg, humility. To accept that there's something greater than my aptitude is happening right now. And I cannot reason with it. I don't understand. Why would Hashem make this control? For what reason? No. If it's happening, I have to accept that there's something great happening. And this is my ability to heal the world heal the concealment, heal intergenerational trauma, etc., etc. So imagine the next time you see something or somebody says something to you. I want you to think the last time someone says something, you saw something that immediately like this, and you wanted to explode. Obviously, as adults, we understand that explosion not only doesn't do anything, not only doesn't heal. It's like having a wound and then started like really picking at it and ripping at it because there's a wound, so I'm trying to rip it out. You want to rip this wound out. You think you're going to rip a wound, you're going to create a bigger wound that you're going to have to heal anyway. Rather, next time we're triggered, you have to ask, wait. Do I really believe in God? That is God my crutch. A nice philosophy. A nice disguise. But do I really have faith in the true and living God? And if so, doesn't Hasidus explain that everything's divine providence? From the rustling of the leaf on the tree, each leaf in all of history, and a blade of grass. As we learned 2 weeks ago, as the Midrash tells us, there's not one blade of grass that doesn't have an angel that strikes upon it and tells it grow. In other words, each blade of grass in itself has a unique purpose in all of history. How much more so human beings, and how much more so Am Koive? How much more so us? So now, if I truly have faith in Hashem, and this is a real God, and Yiddishkeit is real, and I know it, I'm certain of it, is it plausible on any level? God forbid. Yeah, of course, God manages the world with and through His divine providence, except for the bubble of what I just experienced. Over there's no God. That's Amalek.
Rabbi, can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
So if the first step is Hod, would you say it's eventually there to lead us to Malchus? Because if we're noticing something, it's like previous classes, you said it's for us to come and do something about it. It's just to do it the correct way.
Yeah, but first and foremost, obviously everything, Dira Basachteni, means you have to, whole entire purpose is to bring it to Malchus of Malchus, Malchus of Asiya, and so on and so forth. Obviously, it's all to be revealed in this world, in the lowest of the low. But in order, it says we have to have our feet planted upon the ground, not to be drowning in the ground. For us not to fall apart, we need to have the recognition of the truth, humility. This is God's world, and this is all from God. So rather than reacting, response comes from the animal soul, from the godly soul. And it's only when we could perceive from a point of the godly soul's perspective, integrate our unique perceptions with the godly soul perspective, can we truly respond to the world in accordance to Hashem's desire and reveal that the world, Olam, is not a jungle, as the Rebbe says in a monumental talk. It's Hashem's paradise. It's his place of his delight where he wants to reveal his essence. It's just us. We are the agents that Hashem sent into this world in order to reveal that, to work through it, to transform. And for this, the Zohar says that every single day that we're alive, we enclose our soul with a garment that is able to withstand the infinite light that's going to be revealed in the days to come. And that's through bringing the Torah and mitzvot to every single space of the day, every experience. So rather than, God forbid, being despondent, chaz v'shalom, we have to wipe away the Amalek, the force of coldness. As we spoke about several weeks ago, when did Amalek come upon us? As a mitzvah, and we're going to be reading this this Shabbat. As this is a Shabbat Zachor, the Shabbat of remembering, the Shabbat that precedes Purim is called Shabbat Zachor. And this Shabbat in itself, we read the last passages of the portion Ki Teitzeh, which is in the book of Dvarim. And the very last passage of Ki Teitzeh is where we learn the commandment of remembering what Amalek did to us, and the mitzvah to wipe him out. What it says? Remember what Amalek did to you on the way when you came out of Egypt. The previous Rebbe, in a discourse in 1934, Parsha Zachor, incidentally, says that we see from this passage that Amalek approaches a Jew only when they try to go out of Egypt. In other words, once the Jew had enough courage to get out of Egypt, as we spoke about what that meant before, have a resolve. I'm done with these constrictions, with this trauma, living in such a disarray. I'm done with that. And then go out with blind faith. Where we go to a desert. What are we going to? Don't worry, Hashem has you. Then confront the Yam Suf, then confront the Sea of Reeds, the impossibility. Well, and we spoke about the division of the four groups. And to cross that sea and see open godliness. Once you went through all of that process and you see God now and everything's hunky-dory, now Amalek comes. Tries to cool you off. Says, what's his cooling? As we learned in last week's class of remembering Amalek, he tells you why you get so excited. It's not a miracle. And if it's a miracle, so what? It's for God can't do miracles, so why are you getting excited? And if he says, of course, it says, but don't get affected by it. And don't let it come to you nitty-gritty. In other words, yes, there's a great God. Yes, he's performing miracles. Yes, you've experienced miracles yourself. Yes. But when it comes to this trigger, there's no God. Don't get excited. That's Amalek. And once Amalek comes, as we spoke about in yesterday's class, he's there to cool you off. And once you cool off, then all the toxic emotions could start coming out, could start taking hold. Because regarding Hashem is called, he says, I'm a fire that consumes fire. The holy fire that consumes the animalistic and the Yesahara fires. Amalek tries to cool that off. We are day workers. We're here to reveal light. Not to get occupied with the petchemesh of the darkness. Yes, it's darkness. But we know the purpose of darkness is to transform it into a greater light. And for this, each day we must be alive. With each day, we are given unique opportunities. Even some of them seems routine to what I've already experienced so many times before, but today's literally novel. Never happened, will never happen again. So treat it as though you're making history. And if you're making history, wow, aren't you so happy that the King of all kings, the creator of all the entire universe, thought about you. Could you imagine? He thought about you, not yesterday, not a week ago, not when you think you saw what you saw. He thought about this before creation, and for this reason he led, as we said yesterday, Mishalech Shidduchim, Hashem, since the days of creation, has been making Shidduchim between every single time and space and experience. For you to come along and experience this so you could be an agent and a partner and a wife with him. And incidentally, this happened only after we hit rock bottom and nearly came to, God forbid, ... Chas v'shalom, in the story of Purim. It's when we threw all the tradition, all the mitzvot, and try to assimilate and try to impress the wolf so he'll protect us. In other words, we've not only engaged the world, we started trusting in the power of the world that it will protect us. And we cast away our immune system, we cast away God. And then we were prone to whatever consequence is going to happen in the world. Hashem says, you think the forces of nature is going to protect you. Okay, let's see. But it's specifically when we came to that point, neither thought, rhyme, or reason would satisfy that darkness. In order to be able to transform that darkness, what was necessary is Mesiras Nefesh, which stems from not just a godly soul, but from the Pintele Yid of the godly soul. And once that comes out, that's when transformation begins. And transformation is not localized to the individual, but rather it has a ever-reaching effect on all of time and history, space, time, and history. And that's why we learn Simcha specifically, is joy, Simcha, joy and happiness specifically from Purim, not from Pesach. Because in Pesach, Hashem revealed many great miracles, but in Pesach, he subdued the enemy. No more Paro, no more Egypt, sea splits, but the enemy's still there. Albeit he's completely subdued. He has no voice, he has no power, but he's there. The remission. Purim, Hashem did not subdue Achashverosh or Iran or Persia. As our sages say in the Gemara, why don't we say Hallel on Purim? Because even after Purim, after the miracle of Purim, we're still servants to Achashverosh. Purim wasn't a subduing of our enemies. Purim was a transformation of the entirety of the experience. And that came from us. That's, as we said, the Grager has to be spun from the bottom. Because even in Hanukkah, we saw open miracles. As we say in the Ala Nisim for Hanukkah, Hashem delivered the weak in the hands of the strong, the strong in the hand of the weak, the many in the hands of the few, etc. In other words, Hashem changed the laws of nature here. In Purim, nothing changed. We reveal the essence of ourselves in the moment of darkness, and that diffuse open godliness everywhere and transform the world. the darkness to light, the bitter to sweet. So today's homework is to revise our triggers. When we seemingly get upset, when we have the right to get upset, shut down, etc., etc., we have to tell ourselves, wait. This is a historical moment. Are we impressed by the stories where the hero ran away the last minute? He's heroic. He knows he has, but the last minute he ran away. No. The greatest heroes' stories are the one that it seemingly wasn't even a hero, but he did heroic and valiant things. We don't need to be perfect, but we are totally capable and able to do perfect things. So let us take the times where we want to react and say, whoa, hold on. Who is talking here? Is it my true self or not? And I'm making history. What kind of history right now? If this is recorded, the Gemara the Torah says that if Reuben knew that his words, everything he's doing is going to be recorded for posterity in the Torah, he would have never left Yosef to either serve his father or to go make tshuva. He would have immediately had Mesiras Nefesh to take Yosef out of the pit. Like we discussed several in the summertime, those four or five people who bought a plot in Israel, Herzog, etc., Rothschild, when they bought a plot in Israel, they bought a very small plot. They didn't. This is going all the way back. Had they known what Israel is going to come, and at that point they could have bought the entire space, but they had such a small view of what they're able to accomplish. If you knew that right now you're making history, and one day they're going to be reading about it for all ages, how would you respond right now? If you knew that you are tzchokas al Elokim, that all the Elokim that came before you, including in your life, but before you, all the intergenerational trauma and all the negative and everything that brought you is only for tzchok. And God is watching, and your ancestors in Shemaim are all watching and vying and pleading, please, all of us is waiting for all of us prompted, and we did our best so you could do your best. All of Am Yisrael Mashiach, as the Rebbe always cites the Rambam, that a Jew needs to see that the world is half on a scale, half good, half the opposite, and one good deed could tip the scale. How would you look at it right now? Would you Chaz v'Shalom want to add more to the negative? No, God forbid. Find the opportunities to introduce light and transform. We'll continue to see Mr. Hashem tomorrow. If you like what you heard today, please share it with your friends. It's a mitzvah to share. When your wellspring will burst forth. If you see the YouTube link, like it, share it. If you share the audio that's going to be shared later, share it with your friends. It's a very, very pertinent mitzvah, one that brings light everywhere. Thank you very much. We'll continue this tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.